So I just saw House of the Dragon, and what did I think? Well, I should note I came in fairly skeptical with some of the casting choices and even some of the hints of what they were going to do with the story, but I am glad to report this was pretty good. It's a lot better than I expected. And unlike a lot of other things, the trailer really did not spoil much. They have so much more than the trailer showed. So that was very delightful. So for the most part, very rock solid episode. A few nitpicks, a few flaws. It does bring the score down a little bit, but overall, yeah, a very strong start. I'd place this sort of between 8 to 8.25, somewhere in that vicinity. It was definitely very strong. So let's get to it. The major things, the callbacks. I think they were fairly balanced at the beginning, but by the later half of the episode, it got a little bit too much. I wish they pulled back on some of the callbacks, but most of them felt appropriate. Do they address season 8? Yes, they do address a lot of issues in season 8. Given the enormity of the issues, they couldn't address everything. But did they address a few of the major concerns? Yes, especially Daenerys. If you are a big Daenerys fan, and I'm kind of mid Daenerys, you will like this episode. They do a lot with Daenerys. They clearly are answering certain questions people have Daenerys. I think he's even given hints about Winds of Winter, that Daenerys will be portrayed as more of a tragic hero than a capital V villain. I'll just say that. And I like that. I thought that was balanced. Did it become too much after a while? Yeah, but again, they do address certain major issues. The dragons. The dragons do look fake. We see two of them. They do look good, but they don't fit the environment. I thought they only looked realistic in a few shots, but they look good fake, not bad fake. This is not bad MCU CGI. It's not that. It's not She-Hulk. So if you're willing to hand wave a few things, they do look impressive. I will say though that one shot, I'm sure it's an homage. They did seem to just copy paste from season 8, basically a certain shot of the dragon over King's Landing. It is what it is. They paid for it. It's probably in their library. It's like, why are we going to pay for it again? It does replicate certain shots, but I think that's fine. They have to be mindful of the budget. That said, this looks spectacular. The look is pretty amazing. Probably the only thing that didn't work are the wigs, and I'm going to get to that a little later. But for the most part, the costumes, the settings, the production value, very high. And they do an interesting job of sort of tying in the Easter eggs with the setting and how they did the production design. It does definitely look a little phony and fake in certain places. Like when we see crowds, we know that it's CGI. It's definitely not real. They probably only have a handful of real extras. So the directing style is also very distinct. Now, Miguel did a couple of the episodes for Game of Thrones, but don't rely upon that. He has gotten a very different style. This is a very fast episode. It's very fast. If you do know the books and you are a Game of Thrones fanatic from the TV show alone, you won't need too much. You'll pick up most of the stuff. But if you are completely new, you may get overwhelmed. But this is ironically aimed more for the normie intermediate fans, very much, because they do a lot of hand holding, which I appreciated and I understood. After a while, it did get a little bit too much. So if you are a hardcore fan, I think they're going to be split. Some hardcore fans will appreciate this, but a lot of them will be, you did a little bit too much to the new fans or to try to win back the old fans. I understood they were kind of in a no-win situation, so it is what it is. They made some sacrifices. It didn't ruin the episode, but definitely some moments felt unduly slow or they repeated exposition for no reason. I got it the first time, but performers, well, it's actually pretty interesting because I have been on record. I've been very skeptical of Matt Smith and the Corliss controversy. I will say the acting was a lot better than I expected. Even Matt Smith, who I'm still not sure really is a Targaryen, I actually thought it was fairly well done, and the costumes helped a lot. When he looks good in the armor, he looks good in the armor, so I thought that was fine. It is a little overboard and self indulgent, but that is the character. I wish they edited him a little bit better. And they did kind of a lore violation early on in the episode, but they do address it in the later half. So that was good with the Iron Throne. I'll just say that. I sort of felt like you can't really do that with the throne. That doesn't fit, but they do address this later. So the performances were mostly good. I'd actually say, and I'm not joking, Corliss actually did some of the best acting in this episode. It's very subtle. Just look out for his facial hand gestures. There's a lot that's being communicated just the way people move and move their hands and just their expression on their faces. I thought that was very well done. However, I will say he is still a little hard to believe, again, putting aside the obvious racial politics, because the wigs look terrible. White or black, all the performers look very fake with the wigs. I don't understand. Everything else looks really good, but the wigs look really horrible. You just will notice how fake they are. So that's a big problem. And I'm not joking. In one shot, like he's sort of focusing on some black children. They look really fake with their wigs. So that's going to be a problem, I think, going forward, like how they're going to manage the wigs. So the wigs really are distracting. That was a major, major visual problem. In terms of the plot, they just go through the basics. This is a Targaryen civil war. This is a crisis of succession. Daemon is obviously very ambitious. He's scheming for the throne. It's fairly simple, basic stuff, but they do quite a few interesting Easter eggs to fill out the world building. They do, I think, do some contradictory stuff, which I did not enjoy. There's one piece of dialogue, especially when they're going back between themselves with Corlys, the Maesters, and the other houses, and I thought that didn't seem right. Given the number of dragons, that does not make any sense. But it's only short. It's a very short piece of dialogue. So for the most part, overall, this is very strong stuff. I will say though, and I don't want to say this, but Olivia Cook was kind of disappointing. I thought Millie was very good, very awesome. Unfortunately, they focus a little bit too much on her face, so you will definitely see she is not related to Matt Smith. She does not fit this family tree. But Olivia didn't really register. Only in a few shots you can really see that she's very beautiful and very charismatic. So she was pretty disappointing. I don't want to say that because I actually had high hopes. But again, this is the first episode, but she was probably one of the weakest parts of the episode. I was a little disappointing. So overall, a very, very strong start. I'm sure we're going to be doing a lot of discussions back and forth between the moderate and more extreme fan base if they made enough concessions or if they went too far. I honestly thought it would be a blowout with this and Rings of Power because Rings of Power, whatever you think about it, looks fantastic. They've definitely spent a lot of money to make things look good. I'd say at this point, they're fairly co-equal. Besides the wigs, the creature design in Rings of Power looks a lot stronger. Like the Balrog looks way, way better than even the dragons. But this is early. I'm sure we're going to get more with the dragons. It may look a lot better. That's about it. It does actually look fairly co-equal, so it'll be interesting going back and forth what people think in both fandoms. And finally, the political concern. Is there some of the feminism? Yes. Is it too much? Only in a few scenes. For the most part, it is relevant to the plot. They don't go too far, and the worries or panics that they would draw back on the sex and violence. Oh no, a lot of it is here. A lot of it is here. I only think the problem is when they tried to mix it with the humor, it failed. It was very cringy in many places. But if that is your thing with Game of Thrones, do they have the nudity? Yes. Do they have the violence? Oh yes. So don't panic. It's there. Very strong start. It could start declining, but at this point, yes, a very, very good start to House of the Dragon.